Well, welcome to the Way of Champions podcast, everyone. Today, this is such a special episode. Jerry and I are so thrilled to be here with the Notre Dame men's lacrosse staff, Coach Kevin Corrigan, Ryan Wellnar, Chris Wojcik, and Ryder Garnsey. Guys, thank you all for being on because we are so excited to dive into the culture and the leadership and what you're doing at Notre Dame lacrosse. And I just want to start with you, Kevin. Over 35 years, and you win national championship last year. Congratulations, man.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
What a journey. Why don't we start with you, Kevin? I mean, you're the longest tenured Division I lacrosse coach, 35 years there. Many Final Fours, one of the premier programs in the country. What is it about Notre Dame that has made it so special for you?
Well, the school itself, it starts and ends there probably, just the people that are here, the history of this place being what it is. It's such a great place to be. And if you're in the business of educating and developing young people, I can't imagine there's a better place to do it. So it starts with that. Athletics are really important here. They treat it as an important thing. They expect you to be successful. They give you what you need to be successful, but it's never lost in the priorities of what we're totally trying to do. And it never takes precedence over educating and developing young people. And so that's a pretty great environment to be in. It's a hard thing to match. So when you do look around at other opportunities along the way, over 35 years, you have chances to look around at other things, but being in this business, it's about the fit, and it's the place fits me. It fits our family. We've been very, very happy here as a family, and so just not nothing compelling enough to leave over the course of the last 35 years.
Yeah, and what a record you have compiled in that time. Ryan, what about you? I mean, you came in from the Naval Academy, which is a place with some pretty high standards as well. And talk about your journey to Notre Dame. You're on mute, Ryan.
Sorry about that. I'm a Subway Notre Dame football fan. So, I grew up a huge Fighting Irish fan. I tuned in every Saturday as a young pup, and my grandfather always had on TV when I would visit him. And so truth be told, I always had an affinity to the place. I never thought that I would end up here as a coach, or work here and then obviously work for, Coach Corrigan. I think we're all very lucky in that case. And it kind of fits me and my family. And I think there's a lot of correlation between the Naval Academy and Notre Dame, morally, ethically, and the ethos of the school. So it's kind of a home run.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Chris, you went from a head coach at Harvard and a two-sport athlete there. And it was really funny. I'll just tell our listeners, Jerry had, I think, emailed Kevin about getting you guys on. And I got an email from you, Chris, right at the same time, just talking about, cross paths and just talking about, your being a fan of the podcast and our books and stuff. And so talk about your journey as well, Chris.
Sure. I grew up in New Jersey, and I played soccer and lacrosse at Harvard, and I didn't get into coaching right away. I actually tried to play professional soccer right after college over in Holland, and it wasn't good enough. And I also had an opportunity to go play club lacrosse in Australia. So got my Harvard degree and then spent 2 years just kind of traveling around the world and using sport as that vehicle to really see the world and have two great experiences. And when I got back, I was coaching in my high school, didn't have any money, wound up taking a job to make some money on Wall Street, worked on Wall Street for 4 years, and really kind of 9/11 was the epiphany for me, how much I really wanted to coach and have a positive impact on young people and get back into education. My mom was an educator. And so I started coaching at Harvard 21 years ago. Been at Harvard, been at Penn, Bowdoin College, back at Harvard, and now out at Notre Dame.
Wow, it's amazing staff. And Ryder, just of course, last but not least, man.
Yeah, I grew up on the East Coast in New Hampshire. I was lucky enough to get recruited by Coach Corrigan 11 years ago now. And I've been fortunate enough to be here for, this is going to be my 9th year. So I played here for 4, and then this is going to be my 5th year helping out on the staff.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it's so great. You know, we've only once before had an entire staff on, and that was UCLA women's soccer, who were just coming off a national championship. And so we're really honored to have you all on. And I just want to start with kind of a first question, and this goes for all of you, and then maybe Kevin, as the head coach, will let you go last on this one. Because I have maybe some follow-ups, but, you know, when we work with leaders, whether it's a coaching staff or we're doing team development, one of the things we always ask those leaders is, how do you see your role on this, in this team, in this leadership team? And not just like, you know, someone coaches the offense or coaches the defense, but how do you see your role in relationship to other people? In relationship to your players, in relationship to the staff, so that it all works together. So, Ryder, I'll start with you as the volunteer assistant. Like, how do you see your role?
I mean, I think that we've got some guys that are great leaders in a, you know, at the top of like the totem pole, I guess you'd say. I see my role as someone who just sort of rowing the boat in the right direction. You know, I've been here for long enough that I think that I understand pretty good, you know, the expectations that are part of our program, the way that everybody's, you know, expected to act. Certainly, I think that I do a great job, or I have a great understanding of Coach and things that he does or maybe doesn't say that need to be done. So I sort of just try to fill in the cracks as the best that I can.
Love it. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Chris,
I love that comment, John. I have to take Ryder up on this. So we asked Ron Adams, who's the longtime assistant coach in the NBA with the Warriors now, and so we asked him what his role was, and he said he fills the cracks.
Yeah, cement the cracks.
He cements the cracks. That was his. So I immediately thought of a book called "Cement the Cracks." Write it for all those great assistants out there who are really doing the job, right? So
that's awesome. Chris, what about you? How do you see your role on this staff?
Sure, I think it starts big picture alignment with the program values, you know, of character, culture, and community. It was one of the reasons I was attracted. You know, not just the success of the program, but to come out and coach with Coach Corrigan, the values of the program. I think it's really important that all of us embody those values every single day and model that behavior. I think, you know, really second, you know, for me is then, you know, really alignment, you know, within the coaching staff. You know, we all have opinions and different philosophies, and, you know, how to clear, how to ride a lot of the X's and O's, and you know, we discuss those, debate those, collaborate on those, and then once, you know, decisions made, you know, we're aligned in terms of how we're going to approach. So I think that's extremely important, that you know, while in this room, you know, we might disagree, you know, once we go out in the field and a decision's been made, we're in alignment. You're really, then finally, I think the relationship piece is extremely important. You know, been in a head coach role and assistant coach role. There's challenges with both roles in terms of, you know, developing relationships. But the bottom line is, you know, all of us, it's very important that we all develop great relationships with the players on the team. And it's a little bit different, you know, here, you know, as an assistant coach. But, you know, simply having a positive impact on their lives on the field and off the field. And simply we're all aligned in our goal of, you know, we want to be a little bit better today than we were yesterday, a little bit better tomorrow than we were today. Just keep getting better every day.
Love it. Awesome. Ryan, what about you?
I mean, I don't want to cheat off a Ryder, but I'm here to do whatever is needed to get the job done. And I mean that wholeheartedly, whatever is asked. I'm not going to hesitate. I think that what we saw last year was an accumulation of all of us putting aside egos, personal goals, whatever, to achieve the ultimate goal. Neither of which any of us have won, you know, and I'd always talked about it. So, you know, I thought about this a lot over the summer. I think that this staff in particular, the staff that Coach put together over the last 5 years, you know, it needed time, just like our student athletes need time to develop, you know, to figure out what our roles are, what is needed, what we need to change, how we need to change it, when we need to change it. And, you know, I think we went from, you know, the bottom of what would at the time felt like the bottom of a shoe to the top of, you know, everything in the matter of 365 days. So I don't think it's a cookie cutter answer, to be honest with you. I think that each of us would say the same thing. You know, I think one, you know, coach is somebody who pushes us all. And so no day is the same, which I think we all love. And I think our guys would tell you the same thing. So what do I find my role? Whatever is needed in that moment, in that day, in that month, in that year. And that changes. It does. It has changed every year we've been here and every day we've been here as well.
Love it. Kevin, for yourself, how do you see these guys and their role? And then how do you see your role as the head coach? I think you're on mute too, Coach.
Sorry. I appreciate what Ryan just said there about you know, the chance to develop, because, you know, I don't like to come in with all the answers and kind of put that down over top of everything and say, this is what it's all going to look like. This is what everybody's role is going to be. This is what, you know, I'd like it to kind of develop more organically than that, because then you really do get people working on the things that they're either really, really good at and everybody wants them there and puts them there, or are very, very passionate about, and they make that clear and put themselves there, you know, and that takes time to happen. And sometimes things, the downside of that is sometimes things can fall through the cracks, because, you know, you haven't assigned every single thing to every person, but over time, you know, it kind of develops that those things are all getting covered. But in the beginning, you're starting with the big things. You know, you're making sure you cover the big things and let some of the little things, you know, go a little less attended until you've sorted out where everybody fits best and that kind of thing. So that's kind of the way we came into this. As far as my role, I mean, I think it's make sure that we all share the common vision of what we want this to be when it's done, and when it's done right. And that's in the big picture, and that's in the small picture every day. What are we trying to accomplish today? What are we trying to do? To Chris's point, you know, it is a continuous process. It is a continuous improvement model. You know, I mean, that's your overriding goal. But how are you going to do that? And what's going to be important today? Because you can't concentrate on all things at all times. And so keeping some kind of a focus on that, but without, you know, dictating everything is going to happen. And then at the end of it, you know, I mean, I think it's a big part of my responsibility to make decisions about things and make sure that everybody knows that's it. That's the decision. That's what we're doing or where we're going. And that's how it's going to be. And that, you know, again, none of this stuff, guys, it all sounds great, right? You can write it down and it all sounds wonderful, but nobody wants to see how the sausage is made. You know, you gotta grind through some of this stuff. You gotta figure it out.
I gotta remember,
you know, and sometimes that's not always the easiest process, right? Guys have thoughts of their own, and you know, as George Bush would say, when you're the head deciderer, you know, that doesn't always please everybody. That's not always you know, gonna play well. But again, working through all that and keeping the focus on, you know, the end product, which is, are we doing a great job for the kids? Are we providing them the best opportunity to win? Are we doing, you know, providing them the best experience that they can have at Notre Dame and in college lacrosse, and are we, you know, supporting the university in all the ways we're supposed to, right? So yeah, that's kind of how I look at it. And that's, I think, given that, you can see why Ryan says every day, you know, there's not many days that are cookie cutter kind of, you know, because we're kind of always messing with the formula a little bit, you know.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm going to let Jerry jump in here. But just say one of the most impactful books that I read in the last couple of years, it was called, I forget the author's name, but it was called Less But Better. Right. And it was sort of this idea of do less things and do them really well. Right. And that sounds like your philosophy. Like, let's get the big rocks in the jar and be fantastic at those things. And sometimes the other things will get by. But if we do the most important things really, really well, we're going to be pretty good. So love that. Jerry, jump in, man.
I'm going to jump right in. I love this, Steph. I mean, if you hire me, I'll come in, I'll sweep the floors, and what I'll do is I'll clean up the locker rooms. I'll put out the garbage. And if that's a deal, I'm on my way. I mean, now I've been around a lot of teams. I've been with over 340 teams in my career, which lasts about 45 years. A lot of championships, a lot of non-championships. This is what you're saying. Every single one of you, what you're saying is, to me, the foundational building blocks of a champion. Whether or not you get crowned champion, to me, is not the essence of what the program's about. It seems to me that even last year when we had that, oh my gosh, moment, you were champions. The difference between this year and last year is you just happened to win the championship this year and got crowned champions. So these are the kind of people that we love to have around us, because what you're doing really by saying, and we didn't prompt you, you're saying all the things that Way of Champions, our logo and our business, what we're trying to teach, and for young coaches to hear this is a tremendous service. Anyway, so that's my lead into a question that I have. But I've raised 4 kids, and I'm very successful. But I'm defining my success in this way. The reason why I'm successful is every single one of those kids are in service jobs. They're helping other people. And my kids have, if you were to talk to my kids now, of course, talking to their dad, I don't get this, but I notice this. They're very grateful. And they're so grateful for what they've been giving, and rather humble. They don't take all the credit for it either. So that said, I know how much you pride in your culture the idea of service. This is when I follow Notre Dame, the thing I really love about Notre Dame is that your values that pop up, gratitude, humility, and the emphasis on service. Today's world seems to be so involved with me, not we. It's a very selfish, I don't want to say narcissistic, but in many ways it is, and ego-driven and what have you. How do you get these wonderful young athletes to buy in to these values that they're not seeing among a lot of their peers out there in the world?
I'll jump in first. It starts with kind of what Notre Dame's all about, right? And again, Notre Dame is great as a school for teaching finance, and we've got thousands of people on Wall Street and in the sciences and all that stuff. They're great at teaching all that, but what they're really best at is kind of helping guide people on the path of how do you create a great life. It's we're not trying to, it's not a distraction to try to be a great lacrosse player, but it's also not the main job. Or to be a great student. I mean, I'm proud of our guys right now. Academically, we're doing better than we've ever done as a team. We have over 3.5 GPA as a team. So our guys are working really hard at doing all that stuff. But I hope what they're really doing is figuring out what are the fundamentals for them to have a great life. And that's more than any one of those things. And I think that's what Notre Dame, when you start with that as a goal, that goal that big, it takes a lot of stuff to get there, and it takes a lot of people, and it takes a lot of support, but it also guides you in the things of, it's really hard to have a great life if you don't kind of have in the core of that the belief that gratitude and humility are a huge piece of because if you can't have gratitude about what you do have, it's really hard to have a contentment in what your life is, or to help build that in other people. So I think service is a great way for you to connect with that sense of gratitude and humility that you need to have at the core of your person, right? So that's kind of how we connect those dots with our guys, and thankfully we talk about that in the recruiting process and everything else, because we want people that are attracted to that. Where, you know, you don't get those people by accident. You don't just accidentally end up with 50, 60 guys who care about that.
Yeah.
You attract that because you're putting that out there in the recruiting. It's we talk as much about that kind of stuff as we do about where they fit in the offense or the defense or anything else, right?
Amazing. Ryan,
Yeah.
was like nodding, and I'm wondering, I think you have something you want to say.
I think, you know, Chris and I have a unique perspective, a little bit more than even Coach. While Coach has, you know, a lot of knowledge and experience himself in talking, but Chris and I have other perspectives because we came from other schools. You know, I was at 5 other schools or 6 other schools prior to, and not all are the same. And so I do think there's a little bit different. Not that, you know, obviously Notre Dame is my employer now, but there is something special about Notre Dame and their belief in the community and the service part of that. And I don't think in the 4 years I've ever seen one of our guys, you know, complain about giving back in some way or going on a service trip, or, you know, in fact, it's the other thing it's the guys coming to Coach and sitting in his office being like, we want to do more, and him kind of dialing it back. So I think, you know, it's a word that's talked often, you know, along with culture, is giving back, but like, what does that really mean? And it means a little bit different to each of us. And to the student athlete, it's time. So you have to find the right ones, and you got to find not just the athlete part, the students that want to do it. For whatever reason, the school believes in it and they get those kids. So, you know, the gratitude and the humbleness that goes with it. I don't know. I'm probably a little bit rambling, but when I was shaking my head because I listened to Coach, and like I said, I've been at, you know, 6 other schools prior to, so it's not always the same. You could talk about it as a staff, you can talk about it with your student athletes, but then you got to put action behind those words, and that's the hardest part.
What I call it is you got to go from the wall to the ball.
Yeah.
So when you look at Ted Lasso, right? Everybody wants to be Ted Lasso these days, but on the wall is the word belief.
Yes.
Or believe. But they don't talk about, as a coach, how do I implement that word? So you can have character, you can have service, and you can have them, and a visitor comes in and sees it on the wall, and it's like, oh wow, what a great place. But what is that? How does that translate is really the question. And it sounds like you guys are doing a great job in going from the wall to the ball, so to speak. And that's admirable. I mean, to me, that's championship level behavior. And I know, John, will open up this question a little bit later, maybe now even, but the whole idea of what a great teammate is all about.
Yeah, well, I think before we do, like, Chris, I wanted to hear your idea on this as well, because obviously being in the head coaching role, and I think, you know, for me, what both Kevin and Ryan talked about is sort of having a higher purpose than winning. Right. Winning, if winning is the only purpose, you know, whatever you win at the end is always kind of hollow. But if you have this higher purpose and this service and this gratitude and all these things, then again, even sometimes when you're playing for something more than the result at the end of the day. And I think that's what the best teams do, and programs that build sort of sustainable excellence, they all sort of seem to have that in common. Just your thoughts on that, Chris?
Yeah, I would add, following up on Jerry, the wall to the ball, I've always thought of it as the paper to the head to the heart. And I think getting those values, the hardest thing to do is getting from the head to the heart. And, you know, throughout this championship run, we played great lacrosse, but, you know, nothing was mentioned or talked about really about, you know, the work that Coach Corrigan's built with the program. I mean, working at the Boys and Girls Club, going to the elementary school, the relationship of building the Owls inner city youth program in Chicago, you know, all of these service oriented initiatives that, you know, our players now go out and do voluntarily. And what I've been really blown away in my 4 years here is when our young men are participating, you know, at the Boys and Girls Club, or, you know, in the inner city in Chicago with the Owls lacrosse program. There's an authenticity and just a genuine nature of how engaged they are and how much they simply just want to help. They believe how grateful they are, how lucky they are the lives that they lead and their backgrounds, they feel truly blessed and grateful, and trying to help, maybe some younger kids who just weren't born, with some of the advantages that they were. So that's really, when you ask that question, that's really what I thought about the service and the culture of service that's been built in this program, and how engaged our young men are.
Ryder, what about you? Because you lived it as a player and then transition into that coaching role. Like, did you was part of the reason of coming to Notre Dame? Was it around that, like, this feels different than other places?
Yeah, I definitely think that Notre Dame feels different than other places. I think that coach is a little bit humble in terms of how that culture is established. Notre Dame is a great place, but Father Jenkins wasn't at practice every day, right? Instilling those values in us. Give Coach credit. It started 35 years ago, I'm sure, when he first got here. And I think it's probably gotten a little bit easier for him every year, because he's had, help from the older guys, sort of establishing that culture and teaching the young guys the way. I think that's probably the most powerful thing for our culture these days is, we've had 35 years of guys doing things the right way. Like, those are the guys that had the biggest impact on me when I was here, was the guys that were the older guys on the team. And I think hopefully that still remains true, because I think that's like the most powerful part of sports.
Was it interesting for you to transition from player to a coach and then see, as to use Coach's words, how the sausage is made?
Yeah, I think you get a pretty good idea of when you're playing, how the sausage gets made. Obviously, it's a little bit of a different perspective. Yeah, very interesting. And I've enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah. Jerry, I want to throw in a question here to
Sure.
Coach, to Kevin. You mentioned something before about, as part of the recruiting process, getting the right people in. And one of the programs that Jerry worked with was UNC Women's Lacrosse, and Jenny Levy there, and her great success. And I remember her telling us the first time she decided not to take the number one recruit in the country because it wasn't going to be a good fit for the culture. And what a groundbreaking and important moment that was for her program. And so for you, it sounds like you're very intentional in the recruiting process about, these are the values, this is how we do things here. Are you ready to, be part of this? And it's sort of like the values help you kind of screen out the people who might be what we might call cultural assassins, and find more cultural architects, right? People who are going to build up the culture and make it and leave the shirt in a better place.
Yeah, let's make it clear. I never turned down a number one player that I can remember. Honestly, I've always felt very fortunate, and I've said this many times, that I don't think Notre Dame is a place that attracts jerks.
Yeah.
We haven't had many jerks on our team, and I don't give that credit to me because I didn't recruit jerks, because I'm sure I have. I just don't think they're attracted to this place. I don't think this is the environment that they choose to be in. And so when, if you're talking about how that jerkiness plays out, whether it's selfishness or whatever, it's just not, it's not the kind of place where those people feel like that. That's the environment I'm looking for. That's where I'm going to become me. And I don't care about what else, kind of thing. I think again, I give a lot of credit just to what this school is, what this place is, what the people here, what permeates when you come and visit this place, whether it's us or our staff or the support staff or the professors, the students in the dorms, everything. What you're going to get from it is like, this is a place where people believe in each other. They believe in, but they don't place themselves at the center of the universe. They have something else at the center of the universe, and I think a lot flows from that. Yeah, like I say, I'm not gonna take credit for turning down any great players, but I think we probably have dodged a few bullets just because guys didn't feel like this is the environment they wanted to be in.
Yeah, and I mean, and sometimes, right, Jerry, like a great culture can absorb a player like that and get them on board as well. So sorry, Jerry, I jumped on your toes.
Well, no. I'm just so excited about this topic. I really believe that there's an expression that I have, which is from grateful to great. And what I've noticed, and Kevin, it's sort of coattails on what you just said. Grateful people are not attracted to jerks. They're seeking some higher plane. They're looking to surround themselves with elevated, emotionally stable people. And so you do have a wonderful situation, and that player, the number one player, is probably more than likely, maybe 95% going to be a really amazing person as well. It's those really good players that we have to watch out for. Those really good players sometimes have very selfish tendencies, and they wouldn't be grateful, and they don't look within and try to give, hey, coach, what can I give to this team? As opposed to, what am I going to get from it? More minutes, more money, more whatever, more swag and what have you. But, we're talking to a lot of coaches out there. So let me see if I have this right. The coaches that are not with Notre Dame, some of these schools, like even Carolina, they do get jerks, and so Jenny has to filter that out. So in many of our conversations, we talked exactly about what you guys are talking about, which is let's measure their emotional IQ. Let's take advantage of their more spiritual development. By spiritual, I mean like courage and patience and perseverance and integrity and things like that. And so a lot of schools, the message to our listeners needs to be, maybe we have to start really thinking seriously about who you want on your team, and start with whether or not they'll be a good fit emotionally and psychologically to be a good teammate. Because I've never met a championship team that didn't have good teammates and good people. Out of all the championship teams I've been associated with, all of the jerks go down the tube. They go down the rabbit hole. They wind up not staying, and I don't know where I'm going with this. I just feel it's such an important topic that we as coaches and leaders understand that if we're going to bring out the best in everybody, we have to have everybody wanting to bring out the best in each other as well. And it sounds like you guys are doing a great job with that, which is really, really impressive to me.
Jerry, the thing is, you can't do it with there's not a document you can have everybody sign. Right. There's not a book you can have everybody read. There, that solves the issue, right? It's an ongoing, constant thing, and it needs to be, it's sort of like culture, right? Yeah, the buzzword all the time is culture, right? But culture is, it's a living thing. It's not the same thing today as it was yesterday, and it can't be the same thing tomorrow.
Right.
You can't like have this, we've established this culture and this is what it's gonna be. Because when you change it in a college situation, you change a quarter of the room every year at least, right? So your culture is not constant. It's not the same. It can have elements, it can have fundamentals that remain the same, but it's a ever evolving thing. And that's what makes it so challenging, right? And that's what, again, that's one of the things you have to spend time. You have to spend active, intentional time on your awareness, not on what am I going to do, but am I aware of where we are? How aware am I of where we are currently, and how does that jive with where we want to be or where we want to end up, right? And because before you can design that program, you got to know where you are at any given moment, and that's constantly changing.
Mm-hmm. So just one last thing, John. So Steve Kerr flies to Australia. This is back in 2014, their first championship season, and he flies to Australia to visit Andrew Bogut. Why? Because he wants to meet his family. He wants to meet his environment, who he is as a person, how he's being, to see if it fits in with his vision of joy and selflessness and compassion and all the other values that the Warriors have. And that's what it takes. Sometimes you have to like go the distance. You know, you have to go into the living room and sit there and maybe see what the sausage is like there, and maybe have dinner and cook up some of that good stuff. And so anyway, at that level, if it's happening, then maybe we all need to pay attention. And obviously you guys do, but we have a listenership here that maybe doesn't think that that's important, or maybe now they do. And that's why it's so wonderful to have you guys around, because you certainly represent championship culture.
Let me ask, and I'll throw this one to you first, Ryan, and then Chris and Ryder as well. This, like Jerry just said, with Steve Kerr, you know, the first thing was that one-on-one meeting. And anyone who listens to our podcast a lot, I mean, the coaches that we've had on here, it's amazing how many of them said, you know, at the end of that season, if you could do something over, what would you have done? And almost to a person, they're always like more individual meetings, right? And, you know, we just had Steve and Phil Jackson present for us at the conference we ran 2 weekends ago. And they both talked about that as well, that it's those one-on-one time. That's the heart of coaching. It's the relationship. And we just saw, I don't know if you guys saw, Greg Popovich just got into the Hall of Fame, and he gave this great talk. And he said, you know, the X's and O's are all the same damn stuff. It's the relationships that matter.
And he did say damn, didn't he?
Yeah. That was a direct quote, by the way.
Yeah.
So for you guys, especially, because I think the assistant coaches oftentimes have that role of really paying attention to those one-on-one meetings, and the person who, you know, needs a nudge and a kick in the butt, and someone who needs a hug and someone to stay after with them and show them that they're seen. Ryan, how do you do that?
Oh man, it's not perfect at all. I would agree with, you know, Coach Kerr and Coach Popovich and all those guys. There's just not enough time, to be honest with you, to spend with each of the guys the same way and in their own individual way. But I think one of the things, and one of our roles as an assistant coach, is to find that and pay attention at least. You know, we're a little bit more specific in you know, who and what positions we're coaching. And of course, when we develop relationships throughout the recruiting process, you're going to have that coming in. So being able to communicate with Coach Corrigan or Coach Woj or Coach Garnsey and whoever else is needed, that Johnny needs something that he's not getting from me or one of them. And you know, I think that's a sign of a great staff. I think that's a sign of a great person, period. The ones that are able to, you should recognize it in your own children. If you're present and staying as present as possible throughout the course of the time that we're with our players, you know, which is 3 hours, maybe a day tops. And it's after a long day, and, you know, they've had a lot of things. And I think one of the things I struggle with as a person is understanding and having empathy for, you know, whether it's my family or our players or the coaching staff, like what else is going on in their world. You know, I realize that lacrosse is not the be all end all. I don't know what's happening at home. You know, I'm away from my family enough that I don't always know what's happening in my own home. So trying to understand that better. And I think that goes to being a great coach is, you know, the understanding when to jump in, when not. Sometimes the best thing to do is to stay away from X player, believe it or not. But yeah, I would echo what they said. I wish there was more time. I always look back and with fondness to the relationships that you've had with your previous players, and of which, by the way, Coach has unbelievable. I mean, not to segue to finish my point, but I remember my first year here, Coach and I were on the road going to visit recruits, and I asked him, holy smokes, how do you remember 31 years of players? And he's like, I just do. And I was like, in my head, I mean, that's thousands of players. And he remembers stories about each of them. And that's a sign of somebody who's connecting. But to go back to it, yeah, I think that personal relationship, and Woj talked about, you know, being, you know, having a relationship with each kid's different. They all need the same though. And that's somebody paying attention to them. So it's trying to figure that out, and it's not perfect. It's not very good, to be honest. I wish I was better. I really do.
Well, I think that's what they all say. Everyone wishes they were better because we see the power of these things. What about you, Chris? Like, how do you focus and be intentional about those one-on-one meetings?
Yeah, you often say on this podcast, John, that your influence is never neutral. And I define leadership as influence, through trust you've earned. So, I look at with each kid, I have a trust account with each player on this team. Every single day I'm either making deposits, positive, or withdrawals. So I'm trying to make as many deposits as I can each day and just build trust, with each player, with the positional groups that I work with, because I believe that the highest levels of performance require the deepest levels of trust. And really for me, the trust is, my character, my competency as a coach, and connection. So I'm constantly trying to be intentional in those areas to build trust within the coaching staff, within each player, within the positional group that I work with. So there's no one way, but really looking at it as I said, those three things of character, competency, and connection, trying to build trust with each player on the team, so I have a greater positive influence on their development.
Mm-hmm. Ryder, do you see your role like similar as, especially as someone who is a student athlete there? So you've walked in their shoes, if you will. And are you guys, I'll let you speak for both Ryan and Chris as well. Like, are you intentional about sometimes saying, hey, coach, so-and-so really just needs to sit down with you, right? Because again, Kevin can't get to everyone every week or whatever. And so being really focused on this is an important one-on-one conversation for the coach to have. But what do you see, Ryder?
Yeah, I think that my role is similar to these guys. Like you said, I was a student athlete here not that long ago. So I have a pretty good understanding of the different sticking points that guys might have over the course of, a semester, year, or the different sticking points like inside of our lacrosse program, what guys might struggle with or might do really well with. I might have a little bit more free time than these guys, so I think that I should certainly be adding value in that department for our team. I think that I can communicate pretty well with these guys. I'm pretty close to their age. Not that these guys are old guys, but I'm a little bit closer.
Old guys.
I would like to think that I can do a good job communicating with these guys.
Where am I?
Yeah.
Thanks
John,
for that.
Go ahead, Kevin.
At the end of the day, what you're talking about is the simple fact that coaching is a lot more about the relationships than it is about anything else, right? I mean, and to Chris's point, if you want to push a guy, you can only push him as far as he allows you to push him. There has to be some trust there that he understands that you have his best interest at heart, right? And allows you to push him beyond his comfort zone, beyond what he might want to be pushed. But at the end of the day, you can only push them as far as they allow, right? And that's a big thing. And so, Jeff Van Gundy once told me, and I think he attributed it to Pat Riley, that there were four things that NBA players wanted out of their coaches, and I think it was more universal than just NBA, but they want competency, they want reliability, they want sincerity, and they want trustworthiness. Well, three of those four things are about the relationship that you have and the way you deal with them. Only one has to do with the X's and O's or the teaching of the game. The other stuff is, can I count on you? Are you, do you care about me? Are you being sincere with me? Are you willing to tell me what I want to hear, or telling me what you think gets me to? Are you manipulative, or are you sincere with me? And can I trust that? And then it's just those things that Lou Holtz said it in a different way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lou Holtz said, three things you need to know. Do you care about me? Can I trust you? Do you care about me, and are you committed to excellence? So again, the same things flowing through all of that, right? It's just is that we all think about every day and it's about connecting with people. It's not about writing a book on X's and O's.
Yeah, I love that. And then Jerry, I'll get your question, but I just, as you all are talking about this, and Kevin, as these guys are, talking about how, you have 35 plus years of relationships with players and know those players and get to know their families and all that. one of my great coaching mentors is also from the state of Indiana, and that was Jerry Yeagley at Indiana Soccer. And I've always Jerry, for me, had this incredible ability to always make you feel like the most important person in the room, to his alums, to his to the people who worked for him. And I mean, I just worked summer camps for him. Right. And I would go in there and work summer camps, and yet he became this incredible mentor and friend to me. And, you know, I felt for many of those years, I was the least important person in the room, but never around him. And I think that ability to do that, when you combine it with competence, that's when you get the most out of people, for sure. And that's amazing. And I think the biggest struggle that we face in coaching, regardless of sport right now, is that everything we've just talked about for the last 45 minutes, we don't teach in coaching courses, right? We teach you the new offense and the new defense and the new ride and goalkeeping techniques and all these sort of things, but we don't talk enough about all this stuff. And that is an area that when we get better at that, you know, we'll have better coaches and more people sticking with sport and better outcomes as well.
Yeah, boy, there's so much to unpack here. Can we have another hour of this? I mean, because I'm frustrated. I have a ton of notes here that I'm taking, learning and everything. Well, there's two things I just want to. First of all, Ryan, you did something, but you didn't call it anything, but you did something that's really important to me in terms of building a relationship with me. And that is you demonstrated a vulnerability that very few coaches are willing to demonstrate. You opened up. You talked a little bit about your family. You know, you admitted, you know, sometimes I don't know what's going on with my family. You know, so many people want to be in control. They want to have all the answers and everything else. So that's something I want to circle back to in a second, the vulnerability piece. But picking up on Kevin, what you were talking about, I just want to say that this idea of the relationship game, you really, really hit that hard and emphasized it. So we had a conversation. I had a conversation with Steve one time, Steve Kerr, and in the 2015 season, I asked him, I said, so Steve, what was the most important game on the way to winning the championship? And you would think that he would say something like, well, you know what? We were down 3-1 to Oklahoma City. We were almost out of the picture. And then in the finals, they were down 2-1 to Cleveland. So I'm thinking he's going to give me some kind of answer like, well, when we threw this offense at them and blah, blah, blah. And Steve's response was, the most important game, Jerry, was the relationship game. And so if there's anyone out there doubting what you're saying or having any kind of question about it, we have to realize that, you know, the relationship game is where it's at. The other thing I want to pick up on too is, Kevin, you were talking about pushing athletes. Well, go right ahead and be tough with them. And the reason why you can be that way is one reason only, and that is if you build a foundation of trust, and if you build a foundation of caring and connection, they'll go the distance. I see that with every great leader that I admire and respect, and I believe you guys do as well. So what you're doing here at Notre Dame is you're building that foundation with the lacrosse program. They trust you. They're trusting you. They learn how to trust. They're taught that. You start to trust them. They're learning about being connected, caring. When you have that foundation, then you can come back and you could be as tough as nails on them. And they know that. And they'll give back 100-fold. I feel myself talking too much, but I do want to come back, John, to that vulnerability piece and explore that a little bit more.
Well, let's just say from everything Jerry just said, if anyone wants to sort of take this question, you know, how do you, I mean, this relationship is the basis of, you know, how you be demanding with athletes. And I know a lot of coaches ask us this now. Like, I feel like if I push them too hard, they're going to the AD, right? They're calling out, you know, the mental wellness piece, which again is a real thing. I'm not dismissing that in any ways, but this is, I think, the biggest challenge a lot of coaches face is like, when I push, some people, they pull back and they don't want to do it. So how do you guys manage those moments, because this is a real struggle for a lot of coaches in every sport right now. And I know there's probably not a perfect answer to this, but who dares to take that one first? This is where you delegate, Kevin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was anxious to hear what they had to say.
Yeah, let's go.
I mean,
Ryan,
truth be
go
told,
ahead.
after the thing happened at Northwestern, I was joking around. Actually, I think it was with Coach Corrigan amongst others that we should be wearing body cams. And I hate to say it, we might get to that moment. That's just the truth of it. I mean, I don't know if it's I don't know. I think it goes back to understanding who that player is in the recruiting process and understanding who you are as a coach or what that program's about. You know, if there's not going to be every great player that's going to be able to fit into the way that coach runs the program and what he expects of the student athletes. And that's just not on the field. That's off the field as well. You know, there's a standard that we're talking about. And, you know, to his credit, he's going to push you to be in that standard of what the program and expectations are and what Notre Dame is about. So I don't know if I'm the best to answer that, but I think we know who those guys are. And I want to his credit, he does not hold back. He knows how to push the buttons. He knows when to pull back. The best coaches do. I think that's something that at least I can't speak for the other two, but for me, it's something that is a continuous learning, learning exercise for me and knowing when and how and with whom. And, I think when you develop better relationships with the better players and they rally around you, then the rank and file will rally around you as well. And you can't hold them to, you can't excuse them from pushing, or cradling or whatever, you gotta push those guys too. Otherwise the file does not follow.
Mm-hmm.
So
Chris, I mean, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was just going to say, I want to hear what Ryder has to say about this. Cause Ryder went through it with us, Ryder, and he spit the bit more than once. I'm not gonna lie, right? And so I mean, I'm curious, Ryder, about this idea of being pushed and when it gets beyond the point of comfort, right?
Yeah, I think that honestly the most important part is the things that you guys have touched on is really building that relationship and building that trust. I think that honestly, Coach, I don't think that we had the greatest relationship early on when I was here. I don't think that we trusted each other. Certainly not as much as we do now. I think that was part of it. I think that, certainly there was some ego and punkiness from me. So that's part of it. But I think that it goes back to the recruiting process and trying to identify those right kids because like that, I knew what I was signing up for when I got here. So it was never a spit in the bit of, no, I don't want coach to yell at me. I don't think that we had as good a relationship as we do now, like I said. And I think that you've done a better job, a great job of that recently. And you've seen it with the success that we had on the field this year. I mean, I think that certainly from our captains and top guys, I think that you have a great relationship with those guys. And I think that, that trickle down effect was felt throughout the whole team. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I interpreted that.
No, I listen 100%. I mean, when I say you spit the bit, I mean, part of that was me learning, right? It wasn't, I'm not saying that you were wrong. I'm saying, you were hard-headed. I was hard-headed. We went at each other a little bit, and especially in the early years. And I think we did, learn from that, both of us. I certainly know I did. So, that's why I was curious to see what you say. Ryder had a great line a couple years ago. He said, I've been with Coach for 8 years now, and I'm amazed how much he's learned in the last 3 years.
Great line. Love it.
Yeah. Amen. Chris, can I hear from Chris too? Because I coached soccer at University of Vermont when the ice hockey season got canceled for a hazing scandal. And there was a lot of attention on how we coached and what was happening behind the scenes. And I don't know if your time at Harvard crossed paths with the men's soccer thing there. But what are your thoughts on this as well? How do we do that? And how do we still convince people that like our athletes, like, I'm in it for you. This is, I care about you. And And that's why I'm pushing you. That's why I'm not letting you, get away with this. Let's just drop another George Bush quote in here. One of my favorites is the soft bigotry of low expectations. And he was talking about education, but this is coaching as well, right? When we have low expectations for our athletes, they will meet them.
I think all four of us, we care about these young men as men, first and foremost, about being great people, of being men of character, not how many goals they score, or, how good they face off. And I think, we live that way through our actions. And when the players believe that, I think that's the foundation right there. And then the second piece of, that we are human as well. And, if we make a mistake, hey, I make a mistake with, this offensive set or what have you, saying to the guys, being authentic, hey, I screwed that up. And when they see that, they see your human side, that we're not perfect either. That goes a long way, the combining, those two things of, we care about you as men, first and foremost, not what you do on this lacrosse field. And second, that we're human, we're all going to make mistakes. And we're in this together, we're going to get better together. I think, when you develop, that personal side connection, that's going to help you, in those moments when, you're having difficult times, pushing guys, to that point of productive discomfort, past, the edge, past out of their comfort zone, and to get them through and getting better.
Yeah. Love it. Jerry.
Well, I want to go back to Ryder. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. But I'm going to take a guess that if coach yelled at you or got on your case, like in a hard way, what you really remember most is how much he cared about you and how much he had your best interest in mind. And I'll say the L word, he loved you. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. And that enabled you to hear that scream or that directive or whatever it was. Am I right along those lines?
Yeah, it certainly, revealed itself the longer that I got to know him. I don't think that I did a good job trying to see that.
Well, retrospect, I know when you're younger, it's hard to see it that way, because, oh my God, this is my life right now. But from where you're sitting right now as a coach, looking back on that was the glue, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's been a lot of times where I can look back on that and see it a lot clearer than I did at the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think this is interesting because we have this trend now where we have students rate their teacher or athletes rate their coach in the moment, right? And I know that the greatest coaches and teachers I had and the lessons that I learned, I only appreciated well after and not in the moment. And this is, I think, one of the challenges that we face. Are we in a customer service business or are we in a human improvement business? And if it's human improvement, you don't always appreciate the lesson right in the moment, much like Ryder said, which, I think was Mark Twain talking about his own dad. And I couldn't believe how much he had learned in 7 years. And so, yeah, this is the challenge. This is the art of coaching right there, isn't it, guys?
No doubt.
Yeah.
I agree. I think when you lead with love, I think the version of love I'm talking about, not the version you have for my wife, that to me, it's the action, the motivation to act in someone's best interest. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they're not going to like that in the moment, but that's love. You're doing something in their best interest. And in that moment, they might be a dark time or they might not like how you approached it. But you're acting in their best interest long-term, and you hope 20 years down the road, they recognize that.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Awesome.
You have to remind the guys sometimes that I'm not your friend. That's not my role in your life right now. So I'm not trying to be your friend. So I don't, your objection is noted, but it's not changing things because I'm not doing this to satisfy you or to make you happy in the moment. I'm doing this to try to make you better, right? Whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a hard relationship sometimes to forge. I mean, again, but to Jerry's point, it comes back to that, you know, at the end of the day, if there's no trust, you can't have that relationship, and you can't do that. There has to be trust, but that trust also builds, you know, to riders. You know, we didn't start off that way completely to the point where we are now. That's, you know, 1,000% different. But
so John Wooden said many things in his lifetime, and he's sort of the gold standard for me in terms of looking at coaching and philosophy and what have you. And then I add in a touch of everyone else. And he once said that, look, if you want your athletes to trust you, you have to trust them. You know, and so many coaches are waiting for that moment to come. You have to trust them. You have to give them responsibility. You have to give them a buy-in to the program. So the other thing he said was when he retired, and he had how many champions? 7 in a row, and a total of 11 national championships. And people were asking him, like, what do you attribute your success to? And he said, it's very easy, guys. I had a lot of love in my coaching. And, you know, and getting back to what Chris was saying, that love is palpable, not in a sense of romantic love or closeness physically or anything like that. It's just that sense that I'll do anything for you. I'm here to help you learn. I'm here to help you grow. That's my job. And I want you to be the best version of yourself. And that's what love is. And without love, you can't demand. And that's the other thing that John Wooden talked about. He says, I can be very demanding. And he always did it with love too. What's that great story when Bill Walton walked into the office after the summer, and he had a beard, and he said, you know, Bill, that beard really does honestly look good on you. I guess you're pretty proud of it. And he said, yeah, I like it. You know, over the summer, I think I want to keep it. He said, well, that's fine. He said, but we'll miss you. And you know, it was just a wonderful way of saying, you know, love comes out. And when I feel loved and I feel cared about, I will come in and clean your closet and sweep the floor and do whatever it takes, because that's what we all crave, isn't it? We all crave to belong to something bigger than ourselves. And I'm here listening now for the last hour, and it's like, yeah, who wouldn't want to belong to this group? Who wouldn't want to belong to Notre Dame and what they're teaching people? And as a parent, yeah, I'm all in, right? So, John, this has been amazing.
Yeah, guys, we want to be respectful of your time, and you know how much work it is, not just to win one championship, but then to put it back together and try to do it again. And so we want to be respectful of that. But I think this was a true masterclass in coaching and so many different things, and how a staff works together, and how a culture and a program builds and over time. And I'm so glad we were able to have all of you on the Way of Champions. And then, I mean, maybe we'll give the head coach has earned the right to have the last word here.
No, this is great, guys. I really don't have any conclusion to this, short of saying that I feel very fortunate to work with the guys that I do. They you know, just the same way I said, I learned a lot from the relationship with Ryder. I've learned from Chris and Ryan and do every day. You know, and so it's, you know, again, the process of continual improvement, right, that we're all involved in. It's great to be in a setting like this and have a chance to talk about some of these things and hear some of y'all's thoughts, but also just even to hear from what Ryan and Chris and Ryder think.
Awesome. Well, thank you, guys. Thanks for being on the Way of Champions. I truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
A lot.
Thanks.
Wow, Jerry, that was a masterclass, wasn't it?
Yeah. Let me just say this personally, John. After 15 minutes into this group, as you know, I'm not seeing many teams these days. I'm putting most of my emphasis into writing and working with leaders and what have you. But I got the feeling like I could take the next plane out to South Bend and work with these people and have a very, very satisfying life because of the way they're being, not what they did, It's how they're being together. Boy, didn't you get the sense that this was an amazing team of coaches working together for a higher purpose, and the head coach, it's not a top-down organization. It's obviously transformational in nature. We didn't use that word, but that's exactly what we were experiencing, and you could see it. And I'm so glad we got the whole staff on.
Yeah, that was a great, excuse me, to have that whole staff to, again, people with tons of experience and vast experience and head coaching experience at a very high level as well in the Ivy League with Chris and all the years that Ryan spent at Naval Academy, and then Ryder was amazing. Just, journey from a coach to a player and sort of that conduit between the two. And I just loved how he spoke about how his relationship changed, because that's such an important lesson for athletes right there. Mm-hmm. That, you go from recruit to being coached, and that's a change in the relationship. And then you go from a freshman who's contributed nothing to the program to a senior who's, blood, sweat, and tears for 4 or 5 years. That's a different relationship. You've earned that relationship. And I think so many young players want the same relationship as the senior without putting in the reps. So, I just love that he described it, and that Kevin asked him to as well. We never got to vulnerability, but that was Kevin being vulnerable, and
he was being vulnerable. He was being vulnerable, and so was Ryan. They were opening up. They're being genuine and authentic. And when I hear that, I want to be part of it. We all want to be part of it. Sometimes we don't like being vulnerable ourselves. We feel like we're nervous and we're a little bit fearful about being vulnerable. But there's one thing about vulnerability, and check this out. If someone else is being vulnerable, we love it in that person. Mm-hmm. It's just we get afraid of it. But these people, we weren't like talking, all right, let's talk about vulnerability. No, it was like they were being vulnerable, open, humble, and grateful. You heard that through the whole thing. So they're being what they're teaching, which is, to me, the perfect coaching scenario.
That is the perfect coaching scenario for sure. Fantastic. Well, everyone, thank you for listening. I hope you got as many notes as Jerry and I did. Once again, we had a lot of questions. We didn't ask them all, but we got that and so much more. And Jerry, I agree. You have that conversation and you're like, when's the next time I get on a plane to South Bend, and just sit in on that for a couple of days and watch it, because that's a special program. And when you have the talent and it comes together with that type of culture, that's when you win a national championship right there, like they just did. So, fantastic, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Remember your influence is never neutral. Like Chris said, like they just showed you for the last hour and a bit. So go out there and use it for good, make a positive difference in the world. And we'll see you again next week.